Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Tonight, the ongoing standoff at the Centers for Disease Control continues as career scientists protest the destruction of what is a foundational part of our shared safety, the American public health infrastructure. This was the scene outside CDC headquarters in Atlanta just a few hours ago, when dozens and dozens of staffers staged a clap-out in support of those top officials who resigned en masse this week to resist the dangerous crank trying to force changes to our health system. Now, from the start, it was clear, at least to a lot of us, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would use his position as Donald Trump's director of Health and Human Services to dismantle the public health system as we know it. The latest example is his attempt to force out Susan Monterez, the head of the CDC, less than a month into her tenure after he selected her and she was confirmed by the Senate, forcing her out over disagreements on his attempts to restrict access to the COVID vaccines as well as others. Now, Monterez insists she's not going anywhere yet, that she actually hasn't legally been fired by the president, but Kennedy has already lined up her replacement, his close aide, a guy named Jim O'Neill, who is an associate of, get this, billionaire Trump backer Peter Thiel. As a result, a number of top CDC officials announced their resignations in solidarity with their boss, Monterez. With one, Dr. Jen Layden, who will join me in a moment, writing in her resignation letter, quote, everyone should have a professional true north, and encouraging her staff not to lose sight of theirs. And so today, employees signaled their own true north at the center's headquarters in Atlanta, where some of the resigning leaders were met with cheers and adulation. They were literally given their flowers by a grateful crowd. These are not Democratic Party activists or progressive thought leaders. Rather, these are career public health professionals who have spent years, if not decades, committed to the goal of curbing the spread of disease and making America a healthier country. In remarks to the crowd, three of the resigning officials spoke about how crucial an independent CDC is.
What makes CDC great are the people that make CDC up, the scientists, everyone that makes this family. You are the people that protect America, and America needs to see that you are the people that protect America, and we are going to be your loudest advocates.
What makes us great at CDC is following the science, and so let's get the politics out of public health. Back to the objectivity and let the science lead us, because that's how we get to the best decisions for public health.
We need Congress to intervene. We need our appropriations. We need to follow science. We need to have ethics back. All of these scientists, like Dimitri and Dan said, are doing the work on the ground. We need to be able to do it without interference and following data and science.
Right now, it sure looks like the CDC is not able to operate without political interference, especially when it comes to vaccines. Even though RFK Jr. pledged just 7 months ago when he was seeking confirmation as health secretary to let the public health experts operate free from his own weird beliefs.
I am not going to go into HHS and impose my preordained opinions on anybody at HHS. I'm going to empower the scientists at HHS to do their job and make sure that we have good science that's evidence-based. I'm not going to substitute my judgment for science. Of course, I'm not going to do that.
Of course you're not going to do that? Well, that turned out to be exactly the BS it looked like at the time. It did, however, provide enough plausible deniability for a bunch of Republican senators who should have known better and did to support his confirmation anyway. And now, again, less than a year into his tenure, he's already restricting access to vaccines. Under that new FDA guidance, the COVID shots are now only approved for folks 65 and older and for others with certain underlying conditions. Was there some change in the science? There was not. What there was a change of the guy who's in charge at the top, the guy who said he wouldn't impose his views. That is a major reversal of a longstanding policy. It's basically impossible at this point to see it as anything other than the result of one crank's anti-vaccine crusade. The kind of crank who says stuff like this.
You said the following, and I quote, "We should not be giving black people the same vaccine schedule that's given to whites because their immune system is better than ours." Can you please explain what you meant?
There's a series of studies, I think most of them by Poland, that show that to particular antigens that blacks have a much stronger reaction. There's differences in reaction to different products by different races.
So I have 17 seconds left. Let me just ask you then. So what different vaccine schedule would you say I should have received? What different vaccine schedule should I have received?
I mean, the pollen article suggests that blacks need fewer antigens than.
This is so dangerous.
So you get the same measles vaccine.
Mr. Kennedy, with all due respect, that is so dangerous.
Blacks need fewer antigens. When I call Kennedy a dangerous crank, I'm not saying that as an insult or as hyperbole, but honestly is the most economical way of describing the man's views. He's not a doctor. He has no public health background. He has no medical credentials whatsoever. He's an environmental lawyer and, crucially, the scion of a very, very famous, wealthy, and influential political dynasty. And yet, here he is, offering up wacky diagnoses of people he passes on the sidewalk or the airport.
I know what a healthy child is supposed to look like. I'm looking at kids as I walk through the airports today, as I walk down the street, and I see these kids that are just overburdened with mitochondrial challenges, with inflammation. You can tell from their faces, from their body movements, and from their lack of social connection. And I know that that's not how our children are supposed to look.
What on earth are you on about? You can see the kids have mitochondrial problems? Their lack of social connection, you can see that. Their faces aren't healthy to you, RFK Jr. Should you bring your kid to RFK Jr. with their face and say, what do you think, Bobby? Healthy or not? I know it's kind of a cliche at this point, but imagine if the guy sitting next to you at the bar or at a PTA meeting or at your kid's basketball game started opining about the mitochondrial inflammation in the kids in front of you. You would move away because the guy seems nuts. Well, that guy is in charge of our entire public health infrastructure, influencing policy that impacts your health, your family's health, whether your kids are going to be able to get vaccines. To be clear, the CDC and the FDA and HHS and the entire American public health infrastructure are far from infallible. Our public health system definitely has mistakes and some serious blind spots. In fact, the entire remarkable saga of ACT UP and the fight against AIDS was about this righteous and very informed, scientifically based movement taking on those blind spots of a health infrastructure. And that's an amazing story. But what they didn't do was just topple the whole structure, because fundamentally there's a structure in a place to try to bring together scientific knowledge and to reach consensus and to make recommendations that are not merely the whim of one crank. And Trump and RFK Jr. are destroying that system before our very eyes.